Sekeres Price for Thursday, June 20th, 2024, coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. And if you're looking for an event venue, discover the Wall Center. Choose between several expansive ballrooms, outdoor space, as well as a selection of small, sleek boardroom spaces. Give them a call, 604-331-1000. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price. Grady Sass, Hidden Switches, conducting things. Big show coming up, and it's all brought to you by Applewood Auto Group.
Applewood Nissan in Surrey has the 2024 Pathfinders with lease or finance rates from 2.49%. Go out and get it right now. Take it for a test drive. At the very least, it's all at Applewood at Nissan in Surrey. It's all good at Applewood.
Poll question today. Jake Guentzel.
Mm-hmm.
If Guentzel costs $9.5 million over 7 years, should the Canucks sign that deal? Yes or no? Vote. Sekeres Price, Twitter, X, and YouTube. We're using those figures because that's what Frank Saravelli is reporting. He thinks that'll be the Canucks offer, or we'll get to that come July 1st when they can speak with the Carolina Hurricanes winger, of course, formerly the Pittsburgh Penguins, where Jim Rutherford, Patrick Allvin, and Rick Tocchet crossed paths and won Stanley Cups with him. I voted no on the poll, and worried that people think that I don't think much of Jake Guentzel. I think a lot of Jake Guentzel. I'm very daunted by these contracts for 30-year-old free agents. Talked about it all week here, last couple of weeks. I don't see them being able to build a contending team with using that much cap space on one player. I don't dispute that Pettersson needs a winger. I don't dispute that they need that piece to be a legit contender. I just don't necessarily think it's the best deployment of their available cap space when you look at their other holes. So I voted no.
It's certainly a debate. It's not one that has a very, well, no one knows the right answer to it because you don't know when he's going to be a difference maker, if he is going to be a difference maker under this contract. So it's impossible to know definitively. I think I described it on social media as closing my eyes and pressing yes, while you turn away, just because I'm not super confident in it. I don't like being on the fence of things, but I'm, at that price, 9.5, boy, it's very steep. He's 28. I've got no problem with it. If he's 28 years old, I unequivocally sign this deal. The extra 2 years, and you'd have to see what the exit ramps would be like for that contract in the back half of the contract. But you got to be pretty confident that he's going to be serviceable till the age of 35.
I'm just philosophically against deals that take guys to their age 37 season.
Yeah, no, it's not often you see it.
And like, if you are going to sign one of those deals, make it with an in-house guy that works and that you feel some sort of attachment to, or you feel some sort of duty to.
Well, I don't like those deals because then you're just signing for the heartstrings.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is like JT Miller. Everyone's coming back to me saying, well, JT Miller signed it. Yeah. How many of these deals do you actually want? But in Miller's case, he's been an extraordinary Vancouver Canuck, right? He has done everything you've asked of him and more. He works. He works in several capacities on your roster. His family has taken to the city. He's been a culture carrier for you. He ticks all of those boxes.
And he's a center, and he's only $8 million. He's not 9.5.
Right. So, Guentzel, you have question marks all over the place here. Let me ask you this, because I'm seeing this by the boatload in my mentions. This is their window, and they need this element on their hockey team. Do you think Jake Guentzel is a finishing piece? Do you think they're that close? Because here's the thing. If I felt like this was a team that was on the verge of a Stanley Cup and was missing the scoring winger and had the cap space to go out and land one of the biggest fishes on the free agent market, then I might feel differently about it. But I just believe he's a finishing piece here.
Well,
I don't believe you're that close to a cup.
He's an elite two-way guy, though, too. He is in the mold of
his defensive metrics are that
very good. He's got a far better expected goals for percentage than Sidney Crosby does. on Sidney Crosby, he far exceeded the expected goals for of Sidney Crosby. So how about this though?
That's expected goals for.
No, the expected goals for percentage, which it takes into expected goals against as well.
Gotcha.
Diane writes in, I'm trying to convince myself that signing Guentzel is really a twofer, since him being paired with Petey will resurrect the old Petey we all knew and loved.
And I hear what Diane's saying. I'm of the school that an $11.6 million player should make others better.
Right. But he is what he is, Matt. That horse is out the barn.
No, is it?
Yes. What do you mean?
Well, because to hear Elias talk about it, it was an injury that caused him to be as ineffective as he was in the second half and in the playoffs.
I think an elite winger, though, probably mitigates some of the down.
Well, so how did Diane phrase it? A twofer?
Yes, because you get the real Petey and you get Guentzel. Yeah.
Right. So I almost look at it the other way, Diane. This is a twofer in terms of salary commitments to get the best out of the $11.6 million guy. Like, I think $11 million centerman with that sort of vision and hands, they should make others better. Like, they should turn a 15-goal scorer into a 25-goal scorer and a 20-goal guy into a 30-goal guy, which is why I've supported going down tier for a winger with Pettersson and then adding another player on top of that and rounding out your team a little bit more. And when you look at what it's going to take commitment wise to sign guys in that next tier, and apparently the Toronto Maple Leafs now are interested in Jake DeBrusk or a Teuvo Teravainen or Jonathan Marchessault, if you can get him on a short-term deal, older guy, or a Victor Arvidsson or an Anthony Mantha, who we learned today is going to go to UFA. And I'm not throwing my support behind any specific one of those, but that level of a player, comes in at almost half the cost, almost half the term. And you get out at an appropriate age from one of those players, and you still have the ability in season and going forward to go out and get that finishing piece scoring winger if that's still what is lacking with your hockey club.
Yeah, I mean, those that like Guentzel like him a lot.
Oh, no, for sure. I see that.
And believe him to be not a great winger, an elite winger. Mm-hmm. And those aren't often available in unrestricted free agency.
No.
So I think you've got to consider that as well. How many more chances are you going to get a special veteran player in the lineup?
Fair.
And this guy is choosing you, wants to be here. Can a Teravainen get you goals? Yeah, sure. But probably not the rate that Guentzel does.
Same thing with Toffoli, Marchessault. Like, older guys probably won't cost as much, less term, but you're not getting that same impact.
Toffoli and Marchessault
no, but we don't know that, guys. Like, that's what we think. That's the best. We don't
know which part.
Well, we don't know for sure that Guentzel's going to continue scoring at his same pace.
Well, I mean,
he did very well.
Like any player,
no, but he did very well in a small sample in Carolina, right? But we're looking at a small sample of games that he wasn't playing with one of the greatest players of all time in Sidney Crosby.
Okay, but you just finished telling us that how great Elias Pettersson is. So if Elias Pettersson is that great.
Well, no, but that's what I mean, is how much of Guentzel is fueled by the fact that he's playing with one of the greatest players who has ever strapped on skates.
But he's getting
did
40
Sidney
goals.
Crosby? Well, no, but that's it. Is he a 30-goal guy that Sidney turned into a 40-goal guy?
I still don't.
And should Elias not have some of that capacity going forward on this new deal?
He gelled well with Aho, who's not too dissimilar from Pettersson.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The points per game that Guentzel put up in Carolina are better than any other season he's had in Pittsburgh. He actually got better.
How many games was that?
Yeah, but that's all we got.
Right.
That's all we got.
No, I know. What I'm saying is be cautious with that sample size.
But I don't think he's getting paid more because of the 17 sample size. He's getting paid for the
and
227 goals.
Too. Mm-hmm.
I think
No,
you can be a massive fan of Jake Guentzel and still have hesitation here.
Yeah. Well, I'm just playing devil's advocate on all of this.
But you would hope those first few years, especially with Demko and Hughes signed on the remaining contracts, that's when you want him producing.
See, for me, the question is not whether or not you should do this or the Teravainen and DeBrusque level, which is not a terrible level to go to, not a terrible plan. But to me, if you're the Canucks, and it seems that they're thinking of guys that we know are special, that have something special to them, a je ne sais quoi, then I would chase down Marchessault and try to get him on a 3-year deal and have that price point be lower, right? You get Marchessault at 6.5, maybe
6.3 is the AFB prediction there on a 3-year.
So there's another good defenseman that you get for free alongside a guy who scored 40 goals this past year. To me, there's maybe the tempting middle ground is a Conn Smythe winner who's coming off a 40-goal season, who's clearly got a couple of years left at the very least. You don't sign him long-term.
Yeah.
And you've got $3 million left over from a Guentzel deal where you could spend that on a number 4 or number 5 defenseman. That's, to me, the second best option.
Yeah, Guentzel scored 30 goals this year.
Yep.
Besser scored 40. Marchessault scored 42.
77 points for Guentzel.
Yep. Sat Shaw saying the Canuck favorites to land him?
Who?
Sat said that.
To Guentzel.
Yeah.
There seems to be some of that momentum for sure.
Okay. Again, there's part of me that wonders whether, the Canucks are the stalking horse here and are being used to drive up the price on somebody else. But we'll see. In fact, we'll see relatively soon. 10 days away.
Interest at the deadline, the familiarity with the Pittsburgh connections.
Oh, no. There's no question Vancouver really likes Guentzel.
Yeah.
But
the question is, how much does Guentzel like?
But even if he doesn't sign here, I don't think you can draw that line. I mean, that's not causation here. There's going to be 12 teams interested in Jake Guentzel.
No, but if the Canucks come on July 1st at $9.5 million, and he doesn't sign with the Vancouver Canucks and he signs for $9.5 million elsewhere,
right?
Will it not be plain as day?
No.
You had to. You had to come up to the Vancouver offer.
Do you guys subscribe?
But we have no idea in a non-covered market who else is offering him money.
If the reporting is that they're gonna offer him 9.5, and he winds up getting 9.5, then he will have picked somebody other than Vancouver with the money being equal. No,
right? But he might have been considering that team from the start anyway.
Well, that's what I mean. Is Vancouver the stalking horse?
No, but just because the information's leaked out of Vancouver doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't already thought, let's offer him $9.5 million. We know that information's been starting to come a little bit more frequently out of the Vancouver Canucks Hockey Club.
Yep.
Do you guys subscribe to the theory that the Canucks might have to overpay a little? The Vancouver tax, the tax situation here.
Yeah,
the spotlight.
So
I'm not worried about the tax. It's the cost of living situation that's different.
Yep.
It is. Now let's remember they get paid in US dollars, so
yeah.
So the cost of living is a little offset, and with the appropriate accountant, you can find a way to get most of the money back to be whole that you would in jurisdictions
there are
that
mitigations.
aren't taxed as heavily as Vancouver.
But
there was that report that he might not want to play in Canada. Right. But I think that's been kind of refuted back a little bit.
Well,
and we've seen
see.
Miller and Besser both sign here for medium to long term extensions. It's not the boogeyman. Yeah.
No. Yeah. There's a ton of American players on this team, and I'm sure they would go to bat for the market and say how easy and great it is. So, yeah.
Let's get to our top story. Dan Milstein, the agent for Ilya Mikheyev, has permission to shop his client looking for a trade. Top story brought to you by Douglas. Look, this typically is the last bastion, desperation move when the team has done its utmost and cannot find a taker for Ilya Mikheyev. Perhaps Dan Milstein will have success where Patrick Allvin and the Vancouver Canucks didn't, but remind you that last year, Brock Besser's agent, Connor Garland, they were all out there looking for new homes for their players, and it didn't manifest. Typically, it's because nobody is willing to take on the contract, And that's been all the reporting here, is that the Canucks have been underwhelmed, that they can't just give this player away like Barclay Goodrow on waivers or some others that we've seen in the past, that it looks like it's going to require some degree of salary retention or a added asset to Ilya Mikheyev.
So walk me
to
through
move
this.
him off the team and get that 4.75 or some degree of additional cap space.
Walk me through this. You go to a used car lot, you see a car there, you're asking about it. You've been interested in a similar model. The salesperson walks you through it all. It's got this, it's got that. You might need to change the tires here soon. Brakes are at 50%. You got to be thinking about that soon. But it's a good car, and it should take you for a few more years. And you're like, you know what? That's a lot of work for that price. Yeah, not interested, and it's not the perfect model. The next day, a different salesperson from the same lot calls you and says, "Hey, that car, what do you think about it now? It's the same car. Nothing's changed. Why would you all of a sudden be interested in it again?"
Perhaps the second salesman has the silver tongue, the gift of the gab, and somehow is able to market and promote that same car to you better.
My goodness, that would be one hell of a salesperson.
It would be. But we've had Dan on the show.
He is so rather silver tongued.
Charismatic.
Yes,
a lot
he
of
is.
riz.
Yes.
There.
We just dropped a riz. That's
With
like
Hockey Agent One.
a big
Yes.
word amongst the youngins these days.
Oh, I know. Some of the young people at the bar I
God,
go to use it.
Quadrelli loves that.
I didn't know that it meant charisma for the longest time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
Even
heard
with
them.
all those children.
I heard them mention it, but I
You
didn't know.
have kids right in that zone.
I just tuned them out.
Do they say cap? No cap?
Not anymore.
Oh,
That was
God.
2 years ago. Come on.
You gassing me up, fam.
He's turned into a top man all of a sudden.
All right. Douglas, are we going to hear about our friends at Douglas? Did you
Sure.
sleep well on your Douglas mattress?
Finally, yes.
Even if you lack Riz.
Yes. You know what? Summer's coming. Tonight, overnight low's only 15. You're going to be warm. You know what cools you off even without the AC? A mattress from Douglas. Great firmness, motion isolation. It sleeps cool, relieves pressure. Go find out for yourself. Go to douglas.ca/Canucks Army and also redeem your free comfort sleep bundle. That's 2 memory foam pillows with protectors, a cotton sheet set, and a mattress protector, all free. Douglas.ca/Canucks Army to get your deal.
Do you think they will ultimately pay something to get rid of Mikheyev?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
You think it's coming to that? You don't think?
I think it
there's-
does. And
because he talked about bounce, but Alvin mentioned bounce back.
Yeah.
At the year-end presser.
That's on the brochure for the used car. It's the bounce back season. Don't worry.
He said he truly believes, Blake. He used the words truly believes that he's a contributor. And then he mentioned it was my fault he was in the top 6. He's a good middle 6 player. He's not a top 6 player. He said he hadn't seen a guy work harder. This is Alvin Mikheyev at his game. Said it was sad to see the guy lose his confidence. He attributed it all to confidence, really, Blake, and missed training camp, and talked about how he's convinced he'll come back and bring those intangibles, penalty killing ability, and speed.
I think you're going to have to pay to get rid of him. And I think the Canucks probably do peel a second for him in the end, because I don't think retaining salary ultimately is, I mean, then you're kissing your sister, as the saying goes. I mean,
well, no, but
like,
it's 4.75. Like, you wouldn't keep $1 million and move him out as a 3.75.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't go any more than $1 million, but even at $1 million, Matt, the whole point is to clear out as much cap space as possible.
Okay, but you'd still be clearing pretty good cap space if you're retaining $1 million.
But I think the whole point is not because you want to flesh out your fourth line. I think they're trying to bring in impactful players, and a $3.5 million player is a lot different than a $4.5 million player at this point. And I think at this point, with top prospects like Lecker-Mackey and Wieland are not too far away, and I don't think they want to move off their first round picks of 25 and 26. But
surely not. You're not paying a first to get off a guy.
If all things go according to plan, that second rounder for 2025 is going to be a 50th overall pick if they have on a decent year, if not a 55th overall pick. what are they really giving up at that point? The risk is lower, right? So I think they probably feel like that's a worthwhile endeavor at this point in their window.
I'm gonna take him for his word. I'm gonna say that if
he's back, huh?
That he's back. If they can't find a reasonable deal, well, he name checked speed as one of the elements they're looking for this summer. Again, Mikheyev's speed dropped off after the ACL, but it's conceivable that it could bounce back up.
Full summer of training, right?
Right. As we've talked about, they have a lot of work to do with their penalty kill units, where they're losing a lot or could lose a lot of the guys who manned the big minutes on the penalty kill. And Mikheyev, prior to this past year, had been a penalty killer. Plus, he's a winger, and you're weak there, right? And you're thin there as well. So I think if they can't find a trade that's advantageous to them, which is effectively moving the player out with nothing retained, even if you're not getting anything back, or moving the player out with a small percentage retained, I'm gonna bet that they take him back, and that Alvin will be true to his word from the year-end presser.
Do you think there's a world where they do one of those like we saw yesterday with Dubois and Kemper? A bad contract for a bad contract.
And maybe trim the years off.
Yes, I think that's conceivable as well, Grady. Good shout.
So that would be 1 year left because it's only 2 for Mikheyev. So if you're doing that, you're trading for a guy who's got 1 year left.
1 or 2. Yeah.
And that would be with an eye to this would be the OEL cap hit antidote, because then if he's only got 1 year left at the end of this year, when OEL's cap hit goes to 4.5, it means you peel off the entirety of the 4.5 of Mikheyev, and that's neutralized.
Both of you take on the Alvin point. Was it just confidence and coming off the ACL last year? Like, do we honestly think that Ilya Mikheyev fell off the table in those 60 games to the point where he's barely even an NHL?
Well, he's never had hands to begin with.
No, exactly.
He's never been a good shooter.
That we knew.
Like, Maple Leafs fans are not surprised by
this.
And
he winds up getting 11 goals on the season. I know most of them were early, but
well, here's the thing.
His first half actually looks pretty darn good. And,
he's got parts of 5 seasons in the National Hockey League. And his pace for all those 5 seasons, or for 4 of those 5 seasons, is for between 11 and 18 goals a year. The outlier by a fairly wide margin is his final year, his contract year with the Leafs, where he scores 21 goals in 53 games. Maybe that was just a freak of nature, and maybe the other 4 seasons are what he is.
But what I'm saying is confidence is easier to get back than a loss of physical abilities. You may look at the player and say there's a loss of physical abilities now at age 29 after an ACL surgery. And if that is your conclusion, then it is difficult to see Ilya Mikheyev getting back to be the guy that we saw in the first quarter to half of last year.
See, I would argue
if you think it's just confidence, then I think you're more inclined to keep him rather than having to move sun, earth, moon, stars, pay second round picks, retain, and all of the gymnastics you're going to have to perform to get the player off your books.
But traditionally, confidence is about finish. He's never been a finisher. He's never been a high scorer. His biggest criticism is his inability to finish.
And the underlying metrics were pretty kind to him in the postseason. Like, he was not getting scored on. His line was not getting scored on.
And that's been traditionally the case for him as well. He's a big body, and he generally moves well. To me, the moving well part is something I can get behind. Could he move better next year? Yes. But am I confident that leads to more offense, Matt? I'm not.
Well, he's also likely to be, if he stays, situated lower in the lineup, right?
Right.
The contract almost says he should be a middle top 6 player, but in reality, we saw all those muffin shots to the crest, pucks fumbling over his stick. He's not that type of guy, but in a bottom 6 role, he could still be effective with the bigger ticket.
I think, honestly, a fully healthy Ilya Mikheyev is a 14-goal, 30-point guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's what he was this past year.
He was miscast there.
He was an 11-goal, 30-point guy.
Yeah.
31-point guy.
Yeah.
You think he's that?
Yeah, I think that's what he is. I think the way that he got there is misleading to people because he stormed out of the gate so fast. People thought, oh, we'll just extrapolate this. He's going to score 28 this year. But in the end, water found its level, and I think that's just what he is.
Okay.
Now, he might do it with a little bit more flash and dash next year if he's faster because he didn't show a ton of speed. But as Maple Leaf fans will tell you, he'll get you 20 breakaways this year, and he'll score in 3 of them. It's just what the player is.
And fair. And I would ask, how many other players in your lineup are getting 20 breakaways this year?
Well,
and on this Canucks team,
there wasn't many.
Not many.
No, for sure. And that's what blazing speed can do.
And that goes into the whole rush offense of Tocchet want to generate.
So what do you think, Grady? Do you think it's a confidence matter? Or do you think the player has physically lost ability to play at the level that he previously played at?
Probably a bit of both. I know that's a cop-out answer, but I do want to see what this guy looks like 2 years after that surgery.
I do too.
You know,
at least I do before I'm giving away assets to get rid of him.
Right. And here's the thing. You do keep him around. Maybe he starts to figure it out a bit more. Teams say, you know what? He actually might have some value. Keep him around. You bring that. You
rehabilitate.
You rehabilitate the contract, but you also bring down the cost of that of acquiring teams could have to pay.
And of course, it is so much easier to get rid of a player in the final year of his deal.
Yeah, exactly my point.
Which if you get to the trade deadline and he's still shite, you've got an opportunity to look at a losing outfit and say, look, you know, the rest of your season doesn't matter here. It's one more year, blah, blah, blah. Here's Ilya Mikheyev. Let's make the deal.
I mean, truthfully, guys, a buyout of Mikheyev this year is not too dissimilar than holding on to $1 million in salary.
No.
I mean, if you're willing to hold it, there's 4 years of the buyout. One of them is at 2.1. The rest of them are in the ones. You're not too dissimilar.
Well, you're not too dissimilar other than he's on your books for 4 years instead of 2.
Yeah.
Which is, Grady, I see you and Jeff are on Jordan Martinook here.
Yeah. I just think he checks a lot of boxes.
He does.
And he scored in the playoffs before, former Vancouver Giant. He's not going to cost you a lot. Just
played for Tocchet.
Screams. Yeah, exactly.
And
screams of Tocchet guy.
A primary penalty killer.
Yeah.
And we have talked
on a very
about
good PK team.
Yeah. And we have talked about how they're losing a bunch of, or potentially losing a bunch of penalty killers.
I know Irf has linked them. And I think, listen, if Tocchet loses Joshua and Zadorov, don't you think he's going to go screaming into Alvin's office? I need guys who fit our identity here. And Jordan Martinook, to me, screams that identity that Tocchet wants.
Especially when, you know, look at how much size is walking out the door.
Yeah.
If it's Zadorov and Joshua. And, you know, by the by, you still don't even have Myers redone, right?
But if those guys walk out the door and you go Martinook and Dylan, you're no smaller.
No.
What's that?
You go Martinook and Dylan, and you're no smaller.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're a little smaller.
So he's projected at 3 years, 2.77 from AFP, which I think,
not even
31 years old.
2.77, you said?
Yeah. I think that's pretty fair. 14 goals last year. Like, he's always kind of been around that 12, 15 goals. He scored some big goals in the playoffs. He plays both sides.
He does. He's scrappy. He's a pain in the ass to play against. I've been saying for the last week, 2 Carolina wingers, Teravainen and Martinook. And together, like the two of them, you could be looking at as little as $8 million. You could get both of them and still have $1.5 million in the kitty for what you intend to pay Guentzel. I mean, the more I look at that, the more I just look and say, I don't think the Canucks are deep enough to go out there and say, yes, Jake Guentzel, that'll change everything. Well, it's going to be, as you know, Tocchet was talking about at the year-end presser, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Okay, because part of the success last year was you had a really good top 9 and you had 3 really solid defense pairs. And if you're not able to trot out that sort of depth, particularly if you're not able to trot out that sort of depth with the size and with the sort of pocket style players, where you're hoping to guys become the type of players that work here. And I would be I'd be more leery of that
Okay, but what if Teravainen has
than a
the
team
year?
that doesn't have the pure finishing winger of Guentzel's level to go alongside Besser.
What if Teravainen has the year that he had last year?
What was that? 17 goals or something like that?
12 goals.
And how many games?
70. 68.
Was it that bad?
Yeah. Like you
More of a playmaker though.
But that's the outlier. That's the outlier season, right? Everything else is
better than that.
Yeah.
But that's recent
and
history.
He can play the middle a little bit too. Mm-hmm.
I mean, on a year that year, Natchez is 28.
Yeah.
Aho's got 36.
And you know, Grady's right. Teravainen's more of a playmaker guy, so you know maybe that means Pettersson's shooting the puck more. I got no problem with that.
Yeah. Options.
No, it's fascinating. There's so many different ways they can go about it. They seem locked on Guentzel. We'll see. We'll see where that goes. Tom Wielander, you know him.
Mm-hmm.
Canucks first round pick. Named to Sweden's 2024 World Junior Summer Showcase roster. This should come as no surprise. He played for Sweden's World Junior team last year. Going back to Boston University to play his sophomore season, where he had a very nice freshman campaign. Scored 4 goals. Became a regular on what was a deep and talented team. It's hard for 18-year-old freshmen to do that, 18, 19-year-old freshmen, particularly when they're having their first taste of North American-sized rinks. Look, we know Wielander isn't going to be a significant contributor next year. But
like this coming year.
Yeah. Do you dare to dream that he can slot in from camp the year after? Does that affect your free agency plans? I know you've been talking about the right shot top 4 defensemen, and I don't necessarily disagree. But do you think they're looking at it going, we just need somebody to bridge us to Wielander?
That may be, but I think even then, when he's in his ELC, you do want to protect him a little bit.
For sure.
Again, to go through that exercise, you sign Brett Pesce to a 6-year deal. He's not there until year 2 of Brett Pesce's deal. Years 1 and 2 of his career, he's playing as the third pairing defenseman. By year 5 or year 4 or 5 of Pesce's deal, you've moved Pesce down to the third pair, and Wielander's in your second pair.
That might be a little too blocky.
Too blocky?
Well, a 6-year deal for Pesce may be a little bit too much of a block for Wielander.
If you were signing a superstar, I agree. This is not a superstar. Pesce's not a superstar. He's a middle pairing guy anyway. Mm-hmm. At the end of that contract, he's your third pairing guy.
Yep.
And Wielander starts to ascend, right? So
normally I'd say give him a year or 2 in the A, but because he's already been on North American ice, so if we're looking down the road,
that's right.
That would be his 3rd year on the smaller ice. Yeah. So he is going to be accustomed.
Smaller ice, playing against 25-year-olds. He's
but the other thing, fellas, is he should be a cut above.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're not talking
Draft
about your typical prospect. We're talking about a guy that was good enough to go 11th overall.
No, you've got hope that he slides in for sure.
By the way, summer showcase, appointment viewing hockey, July 26th to August 3rd. I know what I'm doing when I'm on vacation is I'm turning on the World Junior Summer Showcase.
Can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. I'm serious. I can't tell. Are you being sarcastic?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm a huge hockey nut, but my God, like,
wait a second.
What are we doing?
You're one of the biggest hockey nerds I know. You're not watching the Summer Showcase?
No.
I've been to the Summer Showcase.
Blake's covered the Summer Showcase.
Yeah, several times.
I used to GIF it and cut video back in the day.
The only thing I can ever remember, I've been to the Summer Showcase 3 or 4 times. The only one I ever remember, I was actually doing color.
Oh my God.
John Abbott was play-by-play. I was doing color.
You wearing shorts
in Calgary.
and a
Who
suit?
thought you could do color?
Some people have confidence in me. And Mitch Marner was freaking going off. He was a wizard. He was unbelievable. That's all I remember from.
Was that your analysis? Mitch Marner, he's going off. What a wizard.
Yeah, I think I must have said something to that effect. Yeah. Well, it's not like that's his third goal of the showcase.
Color, everybody. Yeah. I was today years old when I learned that Blake Price did hockey color somewhere.
Yeah.
With Abbott. I'm gonna have to call Johnny and get the the skinny on this.
The boys should be boating. They should be in the gym. They should be chasing ladies. They should
Farhan-
think about hockey.
Farhan Lalji has a line, I like hockey 9 months of the year, July and August aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or 10 months a year. Interesting piece from Bleacher Report on potential cap casualties. Shea Theodore. I had seen Theodore's name on my timeline, and I just thought it was like Crazy Town, with fans just daydreaming, basically hope betting. And then I saw this article, and of course, probably Aldergrove here. Vegas has a hell of a cap situation, huh? Have you noticed this?
Well, they have almost no cap space.
Well, that's it.
Already.
Vegas is sitting there, having already committed $86.8 million, leaving them with less than $1.2 million in cap space. Now, those aren't exact numbers. It's going to depend on how they chop it up for the opening night roster. Of course, this is the team that has specialized in LTIR. So, and Robin Lainer, I suspect, will be back there when the season starts. But you look at Vegas, Blake, and they have a fair number of unrestricted free agent forwards that would be coming off their club. Guys who played, like Marchessault, like Mantha, like Carrier, like Amadio, like Stevenson.
Yeah. No room at the inn for them.
Well, that's just it. Is you look at their forward group, and they're a couple of forwards shy right now.
Well, they're the silly ones that went out and acquired Thomas Hertl.
And no Hannafin.
Yeah. Like there are
And
consequences.
Yeah. No. So
Ruthless.
And in comparison, they have
Höglander for Theodore. Is that what we're thinking here?
Well, they have 7 defensemen under contract. Vegas does. Their only UFA there is Alec Martinez, and I don't necessarily think they're going to be eager to re-sign him. So Theodore's a really good player.
Are you thinking history repeats itself here? Because if you remember, they basically dumped Max Pacioretty for nothing.
Mhm.
Remember when the Canucks acquired Nate Schmidt for a 3rd round
right.
pick? So, they're willing to dump guys for, let's say, 50 cents on the dollar here because they're so desperate to fit everything under the cap.
It's true.
When they go big game hunting. So,
Well, and the other thing is that Theodore's going in the final year of his deal at 5.2. So, they're looking even further down the line going, we're going to be able to re-sign him.
He's only got a 5-team no trade. Because I think in their heart of hearts, they'd probably rather
play the right side.
They'd probably rather extricate themselves from Pietrangelo, but he's got a full no move.
Right. No, when you committed to Pietrangelo, you committed to Pietrangelo.
Yeah.
You knew that was going to be a forever deal.
Hannafin contract
So,
kind of seems like it replaced Theodore.
I'm just saying, to get them the cap space or to get them the forward or both on a player who they may not be able to re-sign. And let's face it, that after you've won a cup, these deals are a little easier to make, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a really interesting player. And to answer your question, Blake, I think it would take Höglander plus.
Yeah.
Well, yes
Even
and no.
for the 1 year of them. I mean, we just saw Markstrom go for a 1st-round pick and a 3rd pair youngish defenseman with size.
I mean, traditionally, I would say, yes, it costs more than that. But as the Schmidt and Pacioretty examples are not terrible ones of Vegas just being happy to rid themselves of the cap.
I'm not sure they're that level desperation.
Flatter cap then.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're that level of desperation. Like they were just super desperate with Schmidt and Pacioretty. Anyways, that's an interesting name. A couple other names on that list I looked at and went, Scott Lawton in Philly as the center.
Yeah.
Canucks looking for bottom 6 centers. Tanner Jeannot in Tampa. And boy, do you think Breezewell wants a do-over on that trade?
$1 million draft
like
picks.
6 draft picks for a but that's a truculent winger right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure he's helping you with the finishing touch, although
He
he's
can
not.
score actually.
He's not a zero offensively. He'd be a help guy, but not a primary.
What's his cap hit?
Give me a second here.
Couple mil.
So it's cheaper than Joshua is my point. If you're replacing Joshua.
Yeah, you'd effectively be replacing him with him.
Yeah,
it's 2.665. So that's a cheaper Joshua. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, and I bring this name up because of the Beauvillier example, but not just because they traded for Beauvillier in the Bo Horvat deal, but because Alvin cited Beauvillier's work against Pittsburgh in the playoffs a couple of times after the acquisition. Kyle Palmieri, who may be a cap casualty on the island, $5 million.
Is he 41 years old?
33. Final year of his contract. He's got the modified no trade. In fact, he's not 34 until next February, Blake. So he plays most of next year at 33.
Always thought he was one of the more underrated players.
$5 million player with the modified no trade.
Good year last year, too.
Yeah. He's got a 16-team no trade list. So I don't know if Vancouver would be on there or not. You say good year. He was 30 goals last year. Great. Like I was like, wow, he scored 30 last year. Yeah, he scored 30 last year.
Yeah, maybe.
Hasn't been great in the playoffs, it must be said. 32 points in 68 games. He's had some real tough postseasons, albeit most of his really tough postseasons were a little earlier in life when he was an Anaheim Duck.
Tyler Mott's a free agent, eh?
Yeah, it's funny because when Corrado brought up Mott yesterday, I thought to myself, yeah, I could see it.
$800K last year.
Oh,
yeah.
Tocchet would absolutely love him, and he would love Rick Tocchet.
And he's fast.
Can he skate?
But
can he still skate?
Oh yeah. To your point, Matt, I do think
those are all interesting names to me, Grady.
Canucks fans should expect the unexpected from Trader Jim, whether that's getting a buy low guy on a salary cap strap team, or perhaps what Irfan Gaffar floated on Rinkwide yesterday, that they're looking at targeting an RFA in a trade.
Like a full-blown RFA guy who's already there, or a guy like Philip Roenick that people are scared about.
Yeah,
and
he kind of left it open-ended, and J. Pat said he was going to put his thinking cap on to try to guess who. But just my point is,
it not Natchez? Like Natchez is an RFA. They've been in on Natchez. So we're not talking Natchez.
Who are you going to trade now? Because the only logical deal there was Hronek, and you basically gave Natchez contract.
Is Höglander not
they're going to need more. You're going to need more than that.
Sure, but
they want picks too. I just don't see that happening. Unless you're dangling a Lekkerimäki.
Would you do Höglander and a first for Natchez?
Man,
would you do Höglander to second for Natchez?
Yes, I would.
Okay, so
because I do think he can be that point per game winger that you want to put with Pettersson.
We've talked about Patrick Laine. Don Waddell in Columbus spoke today on that file. First of all, he said that Laine will be out of the NHLPA player assistance program soon. He said any day now. And then he mentioned teams that have talked about a trade. They want to talk with him if they're going to make the move.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody can speak to him right now when he's in the program. So as soon as he's out of the program, then other teams can begin their investigation on Patrick Laine to see if he's back on the straight and narrow. And not to mention, is he healthy physically? There's apparently a shoulder matter there.
I don't think it's a hot take that he's going to move on. The question is, at what cost? Like, what does that look like?
The Kraken apparently are a team that are sniffing around.
I read that,
which makes some sense. Got to be able to score goals. Got to be more entertaining.
They needed goals.
Need some riz with the franchise. Do you not?
But they're not giving up elite talent for that.
No, I don't think so. But
like that's what I mean. Like,
no, but I think again with Columbus, I think what they're trying to gain here is cap space. Shed as much of that contract as they can, redeploy the money. I'm not necessarily sure they're thinking they're going to hit a home run in terms of trade return. Kraken with $23 million in cap space.
Yanni Gourde for Patrick Laine?
Like something like that.
Gourde's 5.1.
Yeah. Now,
And he expires this year.
Yeah. Beniers and Tolvanen, some RFA work to do there for Ron Francis and the Kraken. Not sure where they're at on Schultz, Tatar, and Belmar, their UFAs, but yeah, if they could add another goal scorer there, I think that makes it more attractive hockey. Yeah, I mean, that's if Laine is set and good to go, but I think it makes sense for a organization like that got to the playoffs, won a round, took a big step back. And of course, it's really still in the process of being built. I mean, they haven't graduated many prospects to the NHL club. Seattle. Really, it's Beniers.
No pressure, Shane, right?
Right. It's Beniers and even the young defenseman. I don't think he played as much as they thought he might. Evans.
Right.
Evans, yeah. Sorry.
I don't think he even played as much because, this time last year, I remember hearing people, Riker Evans is going to step in. He's a good young blue line prospect.
They better let Shane Wright play this year.
He played 36 games.
They're in the Calder Cup final right now. Coachella Valley and Hershey, a repeat of last year.
Yeah, he's had a good playoff. He's been dinged up a little bit in the playoffs, but he's been good when he's been in, and he had a great regular season in the AHL. So let Shane Wright play. Let him cook, for heaven's sakes.
We'll talk more about the Stanley Cup Final Game 6 on Friday's program, but I wanted to put both of this out to you. I wanted to put this out to you guys, and you tell me what you think. So Connor McDavid has 42 points now. He's got a maximum of 2 games remaining. 5 points behind Wayne Gretzky's all-time postseason record of 47 points. That was a best of 5 first round for Gretzky that year, and he did it in 18 games. McDavid has already played 23 games and, of course, got the benefit, not that he needed it, of a 7-game first round. 1-5.
I mean, he'll still get the record, and it is what it is. We don't, for other scoring records, we don't go by goals per game for Rocket Richards and that sort of thing. Like it is. If you can't play in a few games for whatever reason, that's just what happens. So if McDavid sets the record, he's got the record.
Mm-hmm. But not as impressive as what Gretzky did.
When you break it down, it's not as impressive. No,
didn't think so.
Although, I mean, not as impressive mathematically.
I mean, Gretzky's 2.5 points per game.
Right. So not as impressive mathematically.
More than 2.5 points per game.
It is more impressive on the execution standpoint, facing goaltenders that don't stay on their feet full time.
Now, what I will say is if he sets it, I mean, barring a 6-point game in game 6, and he's the one guy that might be capable of that, but if we allow for the fact he's not going to break it in game 6, and we'll need a game 7 to do it. Whoa, the storyline gets even juicier, right? The potential 3-0 comeback, win the cup in game 7, and set the postseason scoring record with 6 points in the final 2 games would be the pièce de résistance, no?
Is there any points total? Like, what's the point total he would need to get his points per game? He would need to go.
Oh, I don't think he can.
No.
He's already played 5 more games, and he's probably going to take him 2 more.
You need 10 points in the next 2
he'd
games.
need a stupid amount of points. He'd need
a lot.
Yeah.
Guys, Jonathan Marchessault last year won the Conn Smythe 25 points.
Was that it?
Games. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a couple of blow-up games for the Oilers that have given them a lot of these points, but at the same time, so did Gretzky. If you remember Gretzky in the first couple of rounds, they'd throttle somebody 9-1 as well, and Gretzky gets 6 points. So he did it the same kind of way.
Well, it's when you're getting 4 points when your team's down 3-0 and literally putting them on your back, dragging them back into the fight. That's where you're going to win.
General manager of the Abbotsford Canucks, Ryan Johnson, press release yesterday, Chase Wouters has signed a 2-year extension with Abby to continue on as the captain of the Baby Canucks.
Yeah, good foot soldier. It's good.
Good for the room
there.
Yes. Yeah. Player. A reminder, July 1st, Canada Day, Free Agency Day. Join the Daily Face-Off Live Free Agency Special. That starts at 8 a.m., where you can join Frank Saravelli, Tyler Yaremchuk, former NHLers Carter Hutton, Colby Cohen. Sure, they'll have some other friends as the day moves along. That's 8 a.m. on July 1st, Free Agency Frenzy or free agency special with the Daily Face-Off. We're going to have Saravelli on the show tomorrow.
Can't wait.
I'm going to put him on the spot about Roenick at 8 million. More on that in hashtags. And we're going to ask him about this 9.5 for Guentzel. Let's get to today's menu. Brought to you by Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova. Quick walk to the rink stadium. Go-to spot for food, drinks, fun before and after the game. Make it a game night at Greta. 50 West Cordova at GretaBar.com. Can we talk to the Lions and Caps about one of them playing every weekend in the summer at BC Place?
Do you think I think those two leagues are going to get together?
Well,
and
it's a
agree on
dark
that?
weekend. It'd be like we had all the fun last week at the Lions game.
Drive down to Portland.
Mm.
Come on. One of the great stadiums in Major League
It
Soccer.
is a great stadium.
Come on down.
I drove down to Eugene in November. That was enough driving in Oregon. It's a longer drive than you think.
I see. I would say it's the opposite.
You know, I love driving.
It's the shorter drive than you think, as long as you miss traffic. If you miss traffic, it's actually not that bad.
The problem was we're not Nexus people, Blake. I know. Well, see, I just believe it or not, I
not
don't
an
trust.
elitist.
Well, no, believe it or not, Grady, I just don't trust the American government with my personal information.
Oh.
Nor do I like submitting to interviews with the American. Not my government. Not my government. So,
bad guy.
you know, we waited whatever, the 45 minutes at the Peace Arch. And then we got into Seattle. You know, always slows down a little bit coming into Seattle.
Mhm.
Okay. And then we got on the other side of downtown Seattle, Blake. And when I say it was raining cats and dogs, like the people in the vehicle with me were like, do you need to pull over here? I'm not sure the wipers can keep up.
Mhm.
And I said, no, I'm sure it'll only be a minute. It was not a minute. It was probably the better part of an hour in driving rain. And so that brought everybody's speed right down. And then the other thing is damn, that highway backs up in places where you wouldn't think it backs up.
It is
Like there's slowdowns and we're like, I'm coming up to like a 50,000, if that, city in southern Washington or northern Oregon. Why are we slowing down?
I mean, there's not many things where we benefit from other places in the region in terms of highway infrastructure, but we have two spines. Like we have the number one, we got the 99, which I think shares some of it versus them. They've just got that.
Yeah. Well, no, but this is because the Eisenhower interstate system is absolute civil engineering achievement in the United States. If there's one thing our neighbors to the south do well, it's transportation.
It's highways. Yeah.
They build them some highways. I mean, trucking's the biggest industry in the U.S.
But there's no north-south spine for them for that span. Once you get to Seattle, it fragments. But until Seattle, it's just the I-5. So
we plugged it in. Like, how long's the drive to Eugene? And it was showing, I forget, it's 8 hours or whatnot. It took us a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
In fact, the passengers were getting impatient with me. What can you do?
Brings me great comfort.
Where are we?
Bet365?
No.
Oh, the menu brought to you by
we were not done the menu yet?
No.
PJ's coming up.
That's quite a tangent.
Patrick Johnston's coming up. Rob Williams is coming up. Loads of Canucks talk here. Now let's get to Bet365 and our bets of the day. Proud partner of Sekeres Price. We're so proud to have him aboard. Love Bet365. It is Grady's favorite app.
Oh, it's so
good.
It
is his favorite app. He just all he can do is talk about how great the app is.
I'm going to build on the McDavid tangent.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh.
You know, the assist record's already in his back pocket. It's not like he's going to be like, oh, I've got the record, I'm going to stop doing it. No, he's been in a helping mode for the entire playoffs. 2 assists tomorrow night, plus 150. That just seems like I'm extracting a tax.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
So I'm going to risk getting on the wrong side of Blake Price here because we had a pretty good debate about this a year ago, December.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, soccer guy over here cannot see Canada's men's national soccer team objectively. He has the rose-colored glasses on, brimming with optimism, despite the fact he has given no reason for optimism. I would so like to believe in Canada at the Copa, but new coach who's had 2 games to install his program, his system, a ghastly performance at the last big international tournament. We were the worst team at the Qatar World Cup. And tonight in the opener, you face world's #1 and defending reigning world champions, Argentina, with the greatest player of all time.
If the take is that Argentina wins, it's not a hot take. You're not going to get a pushback from me.
Canada's plus 900.
You're not going to get pushback from me. Like it's
you sprinkling on Canada.
That's the easiest bet to make.
Like, I would so love to be able to say, folks, I'm betting Canada and I feel good about Canada. I'd just be lying to you. I'm going correct score here from the prop menu. Argentina 3, Canada 1. We'll give them a goal, okay? Can you get excited about a goal against Argentina? I remember how excited you were about the first World Cup goal. They've scored a goal. What achievement.
I would go 3 buzz and just get more value. Probably get more value on 3 buzz.
Let me check that out.
Yeah.
Let me check that out. No, 3 buzz is actually half the value.
Oh, 3-1 it is.
3-1. Paying it plus 1,100. That's your Bet365 bets of the day.
By the way, McDavid is now minus 250 to win the Conn Smythe.
Yeah, I figured those odds would have plummeted.
Yeah.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Patrick Johnston's next.
Patrick Johnston is next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Great Clips is the official hair salon of the National Hockey League. There are 37 salons in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, all Canadian-owned and operated. Download the app and find the nearest to you. When you're up next for a cut, you'll get a ready next text. Great Clips. It's going to be great. The Arnold Palmer designed Whistler. Our next guest, a presentation of the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now playing in summer condition and to rave reviews. And we know that because we are those rave reviews.
So good.
Played there last Monday, and we have been raving about it ever since.
And we saw the Bears.
We saw Bear. It was the 13th tee box.
Something
just hanging out in the meadow.
All high on dandelions.
High on dandelions. Not at all concerned about the golfers in his midst. All sorts of photo opportunities there.
GML Chris Manson talked about the getting high off dandelions like that was common knowledge. I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Would we get high on dandelions if we ate them?
Dopey.
Yeah.
Eating all the dandelions. Then they're placid and roly-poly. Quite a sight. And with the extended daylight hours in June, you can take advantage of the afternoon twilight rates and the amazing evening sunsets in Whistler. Sounds glorious. Book your twilight time or anytime during the 2024 season. Visit whistlergolf.com.
Next time you get ramped up, I'm going to make you a dandelion salad just to calm your ass down a little bit.
Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Post Media. He covers the Vancouver Canucks and talks to us on Thursdays. How are you?
Well, let's ask him without the mute button, shall we? Let's take off that mute button. There we go, Patrick.
Try again.
Well, boys, we had a bear in the complex this week, so it's just like we're golfing in Whistler.
You guys had a bear in Burnaby?
Every once in a while. We're sort of, there's enough green area around us.
Yeah.
There was a young bear that wandered through, and my wife saw him through the window. It was right at the end of school, like the end of the school day.
Oh, my.
Call somebody. And I'm like, who? And then he wandered away or the other way, rolling in the leaves, apparently.
And in North Van, they call that Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Or Coquitlam. Yeah. I mean, I could
You have the teddy bear picnic, don't you?
A lot of nights.
A month or
yeah,
so?
they have it usually in my garbage can. Yeah, absolutely.
My buddy Tom lives on the back of Hoy Creek, and they can't have a back fence, partly because it's green space, but also because there's so many bears coming in that they would just, you'd be rebuilding
I
your
put up
fence
cattle
every day.
fencing in my last house, and that finally kept them out. Like full on big posts with massive cage, and they couldn't take that down. Yeah.
Did you do that yourself?
I did not. No.
I understand you've talked to Dan Milstein with regards to Ilya Mikheyev and his activities there trying to facilitate a trade.
Simply just confirming that, yes, he is able to talk to other teams on behalf of the Canucks to see if there is interest. Didn't have much to say beyond that. But, I mean, you sit back, you zoom out, and it is obviously a sign that the Canucks have not had much success. And, of course, recent history is that it doesn't work that well, although it works out in the long run for the player and the team if you talk to Brock Besser and Connor Garland.
Yes, right.
Their agents were involved at one point, but neither player ended up being traded, and both players had, I would say, career-defining seasons this year.
So you're forecasting that for Mikheyev.
And there's a lot of Canucks fans, and I've heard this in media circles as well, thinking the same could happen with Ilya Mikheyev. What do you think the chances are that he has this bounce-back season in the vein of Besser or Garland after seeking or after being shopped?
Well, I don't know what to think. I mean, I think about the fact that, yes, he kept getting chances, especially against the Oilers, and he kept not burying them, and he kept shooting like me. So I would say that, I had a career high in goals in beer league this year, so anything's possible. But coming back from where he's been struggling at in terms of finishing, it's just a hard thing to see.
Your cap hit's a lot lower than his, so
my cap hit is extremely low.
With you, there's a lot of skepticism. Are we to assume that all of these transactions are full salary transactions? Do you think Dan Milstein's allowed to shop $1 million of cap retention? Like, what do you think?
Well, I saw J-Pat, saying I expect that he'll find out the same thing the Canucks have, which is you're not going to be able to do this without doing some kind of sweetener.
Yeah.
And they're just going to have to, they don't have a lot to work with, obviously, in terms of picks, but if there's a team out there that's interested in a couple late picks, maybe it can convince them. I just have a hard time imagining that this is going to be a terribly easy one to do.
San Jose doesn't seem to care. Taking
no.
Goodrow.
That was but Barclay Goodrow also scored 6 goals in the playoffs, and Ilya Mikheyev scored 1 goal in his last 61 games this season. So,
but he doesn't surrender goals, and Goodrow does like it's Halloween. So
true, yeah. Like, listen, I'm sure, I have no doubt there is value out there that there is a team that would say, yeah, great, we'll take him. But I don't think anybody's doing it as a favor at this point, especially when they know the Canucks are doing it because they're trying to take some big swings at some big players.
Right.
Correct.
If you're San Jose, like if this helps the Canucks get Jake Guentzel, like Jake Guentzel will be here for a long time. San Jose doesn't want to face Jake Guentzel at all. So, what's the incentive for them other than getting a player, I guess, and maybe a draft pick?
Did you hear the backstory there too? That Goodrow, for whatever reason, had San Jose on his no trade list. I guess they're so poor. But of course, they played there in the past, and Chris Drury said, "Okay, well, you're not accepting a trade to Kansas City or to San Jose. We're going to cut you." And they have waiver priority. So there you go.
Sure. I will point out Chris Drury, Mike Greer, old buddies from Boston University. The year I lived in Boston, they were the stars of BU. Greer especially. Greer was this incredible collegiate player. So it didn't surprise me that the two of them got together to perhaps swing something that is a little bit under as Brian Burke would say, against the spirit of the rules. But here we are.
I didn't know you lived in Boston for a year.
He threw that out so cavalierly.
I thought we talked about this before.
No.
Yeah.
My year in Toha, and then
my dad taught at Harvard for a year.
Your dad what?
Taught at
Harvard for a year.
You taught the car at Harvard Yard?
We did, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're a real New Englander now, Peach.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting rid of the Mikheyev salary to facilitate big swings, Guentzel. Saravelli thinks 7 years, $9.5 million per. Should they do that deal? Would you do that deal?
It's a lot of money at the back end for a guy that, the two-way game is so impressive. You have to think there's going to be value there for a long, long time because players don't forget how to play. It's just that they get slower. But yeah, you're talking about one that's going to be into his late 30s. You've already committed to JT Miller into his mid to late 30s. It would make me anxious, but certainly if that's the price to get your team to the next level that you need it to be in the next 2 years, maybe you don't have a choice. I mean,
Mhm.
as they say, flags fly forever. And if you're trying to put up a Stanley Cup banner and that gets you a Stanley Cup banner,
Let me ask you. I hear you. Does he get you to the next level?
I think so. Yeah.
Given you're not going to be able to do around him after committing that kind of money?
I mean, you've already got your number 2 defenseman locked down, right? You've got your number 1 defenseman and your goalie locked in for the next 2 seasons. You've got your top 2 centers locked in forever. What you've got your a star winger who has finally played like a star winger locked in for at least this year. The signing Guentzel probably means it's going to be pretty hard to bring back Besser. Like that's what that means. But you've got Besser, you've got Garland. Like you've got lots of stuff in here that makes your team good. Signing Guentzel is a player that they really you could see in the playoffs. They wish they'd had Jake Guentzel on their roster in the playoffs, right?
Mhm.
So, and they were close. They were not on the verge of beating the Oilers, but they were close. And Jake Guentzel maybe makes a difference.
Would there be any chance that they and again, folks, calm down. I'm not trying to rumor monger here at all, but would there be a chance that they trade Brock Besser just because they've only got the 1 year left? It's a hell of a lot more advantageous to trade him now than at any other time.
Yeah.
And then you use that space differently for this year as well. I mean, I haven't heard that broach because everybody's in love because he scored 40 goals, and I understand that. I'm not chasing him out of town. I'm just saying, is there a ruthless move to be made there if you're the ruthless Jim Rutherford?
If you can find if there's a young cheap winger that you're trying to do a swap around with, like the idea of moving one piece out to move in another piece in, like that was something that I know they talked about certainly at like 2023 deadline. I've talked about the Lafreniere noise before. There was some thought of that, like moving things around, finding a younger winger, that there's a bit more, cost control and that kind of thing. I don't have any sense that Besser's a guy that they've been actively doing something on, but you have to think they sit there. They ask the what ifs all the time, right? Like this is not that when you're asking what ifs, you're not shy about your options. You say, what if we did this? What could we do? Right? Absolutely. I'm sure that's a thought they've had.
And you don't do that if you don't sign Jake Guentzel, but if you sign Jake Guentzel, I do wonder, like, what's the MO here? And he's a cheap price right now. So I get you want him on your cap right now because he's relatively cheap at 6.6, but what's the end game? Him just walking, you signing him to a $10 million deal next year? Like,
that's it.
You got to put yourself 12 months from now, and are you in a really disadvantageous position at that point?
I mean, as I wrote last week, it is, having talked to people, clear that Brock Besser would like to have Jake Guentzel on this team, a guy he knows pretty well.
Yeah,
and he knows every player on that team knows what Guentzel would bring to the table, right? And you're certainly not rooting for someone because you think they might take your job away. And I don't think that's certainly not something Brock Besser would be thinking. He'd be thinking, I want him on this team and I want to win, and that's all that matters.
Right.
I mean, maybe you can get Besser in. He's say, listen, we know you love it here. You really can lean on him on that one. We know you love it here. You're not going to get market rate if you stay. That's the deal.
Yeah.
We may have to trade you because look where we are. He is a guy that thinks about rosters. But I mean, we'll see. I like you said, that's something that would really probably only happen if they do get Guentzel. And then even then, I'm sure it's what they don't want to do. I think this is the lineup they like. They want to add. They don't want to subtract. But at the same time, if you can make a big, enormous, elaborate trade, and I guess Irf was talking about trading for an RFA on rink wide, maybe that's what you got to do. I don't know.
Let me ask you on Guentzel in these terms. Do you think he's a finishing piece for them? Like, do you think they are good enough that Guentzel is an over-the-top piece for them?
He's close to it. I mean, I think it depends on how things shake out on the blue line. It is clear that they would like to add another defenseman that can do, whether it's similar things to Hronek or a partner for Hronek, which then means you need a partner for Hughes.
Right.
To me, it's one of essentially two pieces. You need some kind of interesting piece on the blue line to go with Guentzel, because then you've got essentially say it's Pettersson, Guentzel, Miller, and Besser, Garland in the mix somewhere. You're hopeful that one of the young guys, Höglander probably is a third line winger. Maybe Podkolzin can find his way up, but in the end, you're a lot closer to where you want to be than you were without him.
See, because that's the rub for me here. They need another top four defenseman. We all agree that.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. So. Yeah.
Which is where the Mikheyev thing comes in, right? Like that's I think why they're being cautious with Zadorov, because they know what they need to spend on, and it's not a fun, exciting, but realistically third pairing defenseman.
So collectively, we think Besser, Guentzel, Höglander, who, as we know, had his struggles in the playoffs, Garland, is a good enough group of top six wingers. And then, Peach, you're comfortable with Suter between DiGiuseppe and Podkolzin, Oman between Baines and Carlson.
No, because you're still having to find a new Dakota Joshua. Like, no, don't get me wrong, right?
Okay.
Like,
but that's the rub here, guys.
Yeah. No, you need to get some value. Yeah.
$9.5 million. You're not filling out the rest of this roster with championship level.
And that's why it's not a simple puzzle, right? Like, that is why
he's
we come back to wanting to trade Mikheyev,
over the top piece. Yeah. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
Like, if this was a year from now where you looked at your team and went, we got solid top four defense, we feel really good about our third line, and particularly our third line center, and we're just looking to fill out the third pair and the fourth line. At that point, blow your brains out. Go get Guentzel. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, it's a little bit rushing the fences and cart before the horse.
Well, yeah, and you're right. Like, in the end, I think they want to find another center. Like, I don't think Pius Suter is going to be that other center. I think they want somebody else. So yeah, you're exactly, Matt. Like, it's not simple, but Guentzel takes you a long way towards where you're trying to get.
And Guentzel's available now. He's not available next summer.
Right.
So if you win the sweep, and you don't always win the sweepstakes, there might be a guy like Guentzel next summer, but you don't always win the sweepstakes. If you are in position to win a sweepstakes, you make the move now. You maybe don't think he's the finishing piece for this year, but you think you can put yourself in position to be that contender a year from now. You don't always put, the puzzle doesn't come together in 1 year.
No, I hear what you're saying. And just, a quick glance at next year's UFA winger crop. I'm not sure there is a Jake Guentzel there. I'd have to go through it a little more fine tooth comb. There's some decent looking players there. Nikolai Ehlers could well be a free agent next year. Looking at Pavel Buchnevich could well be a unrestricted free agent.
Neither one of those guys is
next year.
Is Jay Guentzel, though.
No, I hear you.
Yeah.
Buchnevich would make this. I mean, I talked to him during the season. He's a guy that would make this team a lot better, but I still think Guentzel's better right now anyway.
Do you think there's a potential that the RFA that Urf's really is a defenseman, or do you think it's definitely a winger?
I think it's I couldn't guess. I mean, when I look at the free agent list, there have been some interesting names, but generally I've not been looking at the RFAs because
I Martin HS, we know they were there.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's Sean Dursey, the right shot defenseman in Utah. There's a part of me that wonders whether it's Perfetti in Winnipeg.
Healthy scratch in the playoffs, yeah.
Yeah. But I come back to that question though of like who would be comfortable making a deal out west. Right. So probably it's someone back east. That's just my instinct. But I in the end don't have any particular. I mean, I'd have to get this list up. So
well, it's a big list, and you're not necessarily sure. Ryan Lindgren, interesting with the Rangers. He's a RFA as well. Just back on the Guentzel. So you think, because I've argued all week, you can get 2 forwards for the price of Guentzel, right? Or 2 players.
Probably, yeah.
So you don't think they're better off going like a $6 million winger and a $3 million winger and constructing a better top 9, even if you're lacking the, pure
true difference
goal
maker.
scorer.
I mean, I just think Guentzel just ticks so many boxes and does so many things so well. He's not a unicorn, but
No,
he's a player that is in a category. He's at the top of the tier, right?
Or do you save $3 million maybe and go to a guy like Jonathan Marchessault and hope that he's Joe Pavelski?
Listen, if you can get Jonathan Marchessault for on a steal, like, yes, absolutely. Like, that's a great comparable and a great sort of counter.
Because if he's 6.5 for 4 years,
Yeah.
and he becomes Pavelski, then you're saving a ton of money there.
Yeah, like Marchessault has continued to be the outstanding player that the computer boys recognized he was going to be way back when.
Yeah.
And Dale Talent didn't, for whatever reason. He's an excellent player, and they would be very smart to get him. Absolutely. That would be a guy that would be a great alternative to Guentzel.
And he's got Pavelski-ish vibes that lead you to believe he's probably going to be good late. Now, his 38, I don't know, but certainly through the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. 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 So we'll see.
Let me where was I going next? Oh, Roenick. We haven't had a chance to talk to you about Roenick extension.
Yeah.
Which is why we moved on to Guentzel, in that he gives you peace of mind, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty good value. Although, you know, when you see noise that Jacob Slavin's going to sign for less, you start going, ooh.
But that's to stay as well, right? So it's not.
Yeah. But, you know, anyway, it's fine. He's a good player. He has a great partnership with Hughes. The question of him being able to run his own, I mean, I certainly think originally that was the plan, was to try to get him to run his own pairing.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is a bit contingent on who he plays with. Obviously, playing with Hughes is an amazing opportunity. I asked him, is it hard, like a guy that good? And he goes, no, it's just so much fun. Or essentially said that. And, you know, listen, he was quite, I mean, but on the side note, quite at ease yesterday when we talked to him. Real night and day.
How did that
saw him. And he even made a joke about it. You know, I mean, he actually joked about that. And then I sort of asked him about the Euro and, you know, did you watch the game? And he said, yeah, I watched a bit. I think I like Champions League better, which was pretty good, I thought. Very dry. You had to be paying attention to realize what he was saying. But
and at times he does seem wound tight. Do you think the contract changes him? And not that he lets out and he's not as good a player, but do you think there's a chance it unlocks sort of a more loose player in a good way, I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he certainly now knows where he's going to be, right? Like his life is locked in.
His life is settled.
So, yeah. And he's made a choice, and he had to sit back, and, you know, similarly as Pettersson, he had to sit back and be, yeah, okay. I mean, as he pointed out, he was restricted. He didn't have a lot of choices. That said, he could have just sat back and said, I want to go to arbitration, and then I'll be a free agent. I can go wherever I want.
Mm-hmm.
So he did have a hammer here, and he ended up saying, no, I'm going to stick around, and I'm happy to be here, and an NMC, right?
That's it. Patrick, I'm frankly surprised they got him at 7.25 with a buyoutable contract at the end, and a 17 teams you can trade him to in the final years. Like, this is pretty good work here from Rutherford. I'm quite impressed that they were able to tick that many boxes. Not to mention, you know, you keep what was one of the best defense pairs in the National Hockey League together, and there's value on that. What's your gut tell you on Zadorov?
My gut is no.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a confident no, because the player definitely does like it here and is keen to set down some roots. But at the end of the day, I mean, he'll know what his price is. He knows what his price is, and it's kind of gotta, you know, do you really want to do this? What do you want to do? But I'll just my last point. Like Joshua, this is his. I mean, he's gotten paid well. Joshua is more than anything is a guy who this is his chance to get paid.
Right, the difference economically
still gets to lock in where he's going to be. So the fact he hasn't done yet, to me, is the telling thing.
Do you think it's a situation where if the calendar gets to July 1st and Nikita isn't signed here, he gone?
I mean,
Do you think they have to get them done before July 1st, or do you see a
yeah,
world where
I mean, listen, we all know that teams aren't talking, but they sure are talking, So the idea,
he gets past July 1st, that goes
would
back.
you consider a contract like this?
Yes.
Like the idea that they haven't had something quietly slipped along that whoever it would be is interested in signing you for something like this. Hasn't happened. It's they know what's out there, and So I really think if it doesn't get done by July 1, it's not happening.
All right. Grady has delivered breakfast, so we're going to let you go and catch.
All right, he's back in the good books.
When he does that,
when he delivers food to the group.
Attaboy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this, Patrick. Next week we're going to be talking. The Stanley Cup Finals can be done. We're going to be a day away from the draft. We're going to be a few days away from Canada Day and free agency.
Maybe the schedule's already
Get
been
excited.
released.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? The season will be over?
That's right. Yeah. It'll be 2026 next week.
Oh, Christ. Why? Once again, why did we have to wait so long in the Stanley Cup Final? ABC, get your you-know-what together.
I forgot. Who's in it? Talk to you next week.
Bye.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com. Joined now by the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its offside sports vertical, the one and only Rob the Hockey Guy, Rob Williams, joins us here. How we doing?
Doing great, guys.
Mm-hmm.
It's summertime. We're into trades and off-season transactions and still playing the Stanley Cup Final. So somehow, I'm not sure how they didn't get this business done by now, but here we are.
I kind of like it. It's kind of like back to being like a festival of sorts in the National Hockey League. It's a lot.
There's going to be a guy traded before the parade. You realize this is happening
off of the team.
Someone's going to win the Stanley Cup either Friday or next week, and then someone is going to be traded before the champagne is even dry.
It's a great poll question
from their clothing. It is quite a schedule matrix the NHL has delivered us here this year. We'll get to that in a second, but the big talk here in Vancouver is Jake Guentzel, Rob, and we're asking on our poll question today. Saravelli saying he suspects the offer is going to come in around 7 years at $9.5 million per. What do you think? Should the Canucks do that deal?
I'm conflicted on this one. I kind of think yes. Like I think they need to make a splash here. I think if you add a guy like Jake Guentzel onto your roster, like that gives you another core piece, like gives you another piece of the puzzle to win a Stanley Cup. You have a high degree of familiarity with him, of course, with Tocchet, Tocchet knows him, so they would have a pretty good sense that he can play in his system. And I think that's the type of guy, a playoff performer, a consistent goal scorer. I think the fact that he went to Carolina and also produced, I think that gives me even more confidence, I think, in signing him. He's not just a Sidney Crosby merchant. He's not just a guy that plays in that one team and succeeded. So I do think that, I'm willing. I don't know if I'm willing to go all the way to 10 million, but I think that this is a time to take a swing. Like you are, like, this is their window, isn't it? Like they've committed the money to these other players. They've got these core pieces in place. Take a crack at it and let's go.
So let me ask you the follow-up, because of course, if you're spending $9.5 million at Jake Guentzel, you're going to have to scrimp and save elsewhere. If it means not being able to re-sign Zadorov, Joshua, some of the existing free agents, if it means having to go into the year with, say, a bunch of minimum salary hope bets on the fourth line or somebody on the third pair that you don't feel great about, is that something you're willing to do to get Guentzel?
Yeah, and that's the rub, right? Like, you're going to have to go cheaper in other areas. You're not going to have the certainty of bringing back guys that you already know fit in your system. But I also do think, like, you're a lot of teams have made mistakes by throwing big money at guys that fit the profile of Zadorov, of Joshua. And I love the way they played down the stretch last season. Joshua, I love the way he played all year. But, like, how much money can you throw at Zadorov? Love the guy, great playoffs. He was sixth in average ice time among Canucks defensemen last season. Like, let's not, like, everyone's ready to toss Ian Cole out immediately. He was fourth, right? Like, let's not get too enamored with what we saw in a 13-game sample. As great as the sample was, like, the guys like Zadorov get overpaid in free agency. So I think if you can get him at a number that you're comfortable with, maybe he gives you a discount because he seems to really love it in Vancouver. Great, but otherwise, no. And again, Joshua, like, you can't give Joshua second line money if he's a third liner. He's never been more than a third liner. Like, last year was the high point of his career. He's in his late 20s. He's not in his early 20s. So, again, love the player, great chemistry with Garland, but there's a limit to what you can spend there. So I do think that those guys might be destined to be gone anyways. But yeah, you're gonna have to, this is where Alvin's really gonna have to earn his money. I mean, if you can bring in Guentzel, like, what do you do in those other areas? I think he's going to have to figure it out. You have to, and like you say, you're going to have to scrimp and save in other areas.
You can coach defense, though, and he knows this. He has already had success revamping the way that this team plays defense. So he knows that he can work with almost anybody, I think, to a degree, and prevent goals, especially with a Vezina caliber goalie in between the pipes. What we saw last season was this club still struggling to figure out ways to put the puck in the net, which sounds crazy considering where they finished in goals for on the season. But of course, we know how that actually came to pass, and that is feasting in October and November with an inexplicable scoring percentage. You do wonder if they put the onus on offense here in the offseason, because that is the greater difficulty. You can coach defense. You can't coach offense, really.
I agree with everything you said, but at the same time, like, their penalty kill and defense turned around by bringing in a lot of, veteran, defensively responsible players. And
which Guentzel is, by the way, of which Guentzel. Yeah.
No, I think Guentzel is kind of the exception for me. It feels weird kind of saying, like, yeah, I think they should go for him because, for how many years have we just all been like, just be responsible, don't overcommit, don't pay money to guys in their 30s. But, I think the game has changed a little bit here by what the Canucks showed last season. And if you are genuinely going for a Stanley Cup, maybe you accept that a couple of those years on the back end of the contract are not going to be looking so great, right? Maybe you accept that just to bring in a bona fide star into your lineup. Now that, maybe we're willing to roll the dice on something like that. And I do think, like, okay, do you want to commit big money in term to a guy like Jake Guentzel, or do you want to do it for Nikita Zadorov and Dakota Joshua? Like, imagine if we asked that question 1 year ago, like, do you want to commit all this money to Zadorov and Joshua? Like, you'd be laughed out of the room, right? Like, this is a short sample of success for these guys.
Conversely, I think people would be surprised. I think, given how much of a fan favorite Joshua and Zadorov were, guys, if we had asked fans at the end of the regular season, certainly at the moment the playoffs ended, are you okay walking away from those guys to pick up Jake Guentzel? I don't think the answer would have been what it is today. And that is, I think that the absence, the space of time from the end of the playoffs till now has sobered people up a little bit. They've come down from the highs of Joshua and Zadorov a little bit and are maybe ready to make a more rational decision on this.
The highs of Joshua, there were 2 really good games out of 13.
Yeah.
The high of Zadorov was different. So since you brought it up, we asked this on our poll question yesterday. You willing to let Zadorov walk if it means signing Guentzel? What do you think the breakdown was?
It was
yes or no?
I'm guessing an overwhelming yes.
Rob, what do you think?
I would say that is pretty split. I'd say it would be close to 50-50.
Okay. It was 75-25 yes. So
yeah,
fans are there. You're right about they've come down on the high of Zadorov. I think they're also obviously bedazzled by the shiny object that is potentially the best winger in free agency, because I think there's a strong chance Reinhart is going to re-sign in Florida. Not to mention a cup winner, not to mention they've been hearing his name since the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Right. As I've argued all week, you're committing bad years there. That's not necessarily the case with Zadorov for some others, because you're probably out of those players before age 35, whereas Guentzel, you're paying till age
38-ish,
37, 38, something like that. He's not an all situations winger. He's a terrific scorer and offensive producer, but he's not a penalty killer. He's not going to be a primary defensive player for you, although he is, strong enough there to play a capable shift. And of course, he robs from your ability to fill out the rest of your roster. Rob, have you looked who's playing in the bottom 6 right now? And it's going to change. They'll add a depth forward here or there, but have you looked at what their bottom 6 stacks up right now in terms of guys under contract?
No, I know it's bleak. I get all that. I think you can find guys though. You can find players, and the wild card I think in all of this is Ilya Mikheyev, and I don't mean, and that could mean him turning his Canucks career around. It could also mean getting off his salary, and it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to do it for free. Like it's going to cost them an asset. But if you can get rid of Ilya Mikheyev's contract, like what is that worth to the Canucks to get off that contract? And I do wonder, Mikheyev makes $4.75 million. What's Zadorov going to make? Somewhere in the 5. Like that's, if you get off Mikheyev, suddenly you can probably afford Zadorov. Yeah. Would you rather Zadorov on your, would you trade Mikheyev and a 3rd round pick for Zadorov? I think the answer is yes. And if you're willing to do that, then that means you're willing to give a 3rd round pick to get rid of Mikheyev. Now, are you willing to do a 2nd round pick?
That's the question, because that's the Puckpedia calculation, Rob. It's a 2nd round pick. Would you move a 2nd round pick to get off the Mikheyev contract? And
the trouble with that is they've just given away so many draft picks. Like at some point you need to stop the insanity of ditching all of these draft picks. But at the same time, if you said to a Canucks fan last season, even before Zadorov's big glow up in the playoffs, would you rather that I take Zadorov off your roster, or would you rather I take Mikheyev and a 2nd round pick off your roster? I think people would say they'd rather keep Zadorov and 2nd round pick be damned. So it's going to be very, very interesting. The big key to this is like their evaluation of Zadorov. Is he closer to what we saw in the playoffs last year? Is he just a Rick Tocchet guy? Can he be a bona fide top 4 defenseman playing 20 minutes a night? Or was that a bit of a blip, and he's kind of that 4 or 5 guy on your depth chart that brings size and energy and leadership and all the rest? That's the big decision, and I'm not totally convinced that he's a guy that you should be giving big money and big term to. I think you get one or the other.
Considering we just did the homework and Philip Hronek is the highest paid defenseman on a lot of teams in the NHL, how many teams do you think you can find that'll have a defenseman at almost $8 million in Hughes, 7.25 in Roenick, and I mean, whatever Zadorov, and then like 5.5. Like, there's not many teams that have 3 defensemen totaling that much money at the top. It would be a lot committed, considering one of those guys is not making the All-Star team. Like, Zadorov's not got a chance for an All-Star team.
Exactly. Yeah. I like I say, I'm so conflicted on Zadorov because, you think with your heart and you're like, okay, yeah, give it to him, go for it. And you're thinking he's going to be like that guy in the playoffs, but I just don't know that he's going to be that guy consistently. The one thing I do know, guys, is like whoever they pair. I know the talk has been, Hronek, maybe he is on his own pair away from Hughes next season. Whatever they do, I just want them to not put a pending free agent on the Hughes pair, because Hughes is going to get whoever he plays with paid, and it's going to be really hard to re-sign that guy. I think we've seen it time after time where, Luke Schenn got his money. He made Luke Schenn into a point-producing defenseman, and Schenn became unaffordable and went out the door. So that's, if nothing else, I'm hoping they get somebody at least on a 2-year contract to play with Hughes.
To answer your question, Vegas, Colorado, the Rangers. Some of the best teams in the league have that salary structure with 3 defensemen being paid in those.
But there's not many
in those realms.
There's not many.
Mm-hmm. With regards to Roenick, Rob, we should get your take on what you thought of that deal and what you think about whether he needs to anchor his own pair at some point during the course of that contract.
Yeah, I thought Hronek was a guy you couldn't let Hronek go. Like, get rid of Hronek and then try to replace him. Like, good luck. Like, he was an excellent defenseman for the Canucks last season. I know his point production took a dip in the second half. I know he wasn't great in the playoffs. It sounds and certainly seems. I know he won't admit that he was injured, but it certainly sounds like he was playing through something and then that affected him in the playoffs. Otherwise, that doesn't really add up. And even if he had a poor playoffs, again, short sample. Like, let's not overreact to this. I've been seeing like these like Oilers throwback clips to Fernando Pisani in the playoffs. Remember how great he was in the playoffs for them. Didn't mean he was like, he didn't suddenly become like a 30 goal scorer, right? So I do think that Hronek was like, you've got 2 like bona fide, with a bullet, top 4 defensemen on your club, and probably top pair defensemen in Hughes and Hronek. You couldn't let him walk. I think the number they got him at is, all things considered, a fair number. It wasn't the doomsday, getting paid more than Hughes, dipping into the 8 million range. You're in the low 7s. I think that's, I saw the deal and I thought, okay, fine, that seems fine. Like, it seems like that makes some sense. You're committing a lot of years to him, but he's still relatively young. I think the beard makes him look older. Like, we think he's like 30, but he's only 26. So you commit to him into a few years into his 30s, but I don't think that's such a big deal.
Great stuff, Rob. You have a fabulous week. When the Oilers lift that cup, we're going to see all sorts of content coming out of the Daily Hive and Offside, right? Because that was the other topic we were going to get to. Canucks fans and how they're reacting to this Oilers comeback in the Stanley Cup Final Series. What are you seeing out there?
Well, I think there's a bit of a split in terms of diehard Canucks fans. The most vocal Canucks fans on Twitter do not want to see the Oilers do this at all. I think the casual fans are a little bit more on board with Canada's team. I must admit, I'm conflicted. I want to see a great story, right? Like, and what a story that would be if the Oilers came all the way back. McDavid winning a cup would be something to see, but we will never hear the end of it from Oilers fans, ever. So we're talking about thinking long term. short term it'd be cool to see, but man, I don't know. I don't want to be here for the Oilers fans coming at us.
Rob, the best of both worlds is that the Oilers blow a 3-goal lead in the third period of Game 7.
Ease them to that point,
Right.
and then crush them.
Well, and also it will expose the folly of having the Stanley Cup final run so late, and then maybe Gary and the boys will move the season up a little bit and get us out of here a little closer to the start of June than the start of July. How about that? Huh?
Yeah.
Does that check every box for us?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do want to see more hockey here, especially with the basketball done in the J so horrible. So great stuff, Rob. Till next Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?